Welcome, everyone. Today we're diving straight into a fascinating explainer covering one of the most widely read, meticulously preserved, and frankly structurally complex documents in all of human history. We're looking at the staggering numerical scale and the history of the Bible's composition. Now, whether you're already super familiar with these texts or just kind of curious about ancient literature, the sheer magnitude of the data we're going to explore today will absolutely give you a fresh perspective on how this massive collection of writings was actually put together. So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the Bible by the numbers. Then we'll break it down into the Old and New Testaments. After that, we'll hunt for the extremes, the longest, shortest, and middle, check out some unique words and names, and finally, look at the actual people who wrote it. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the Bible by the numbers, a massive scale of letters and words. To kick things off, look at this number. 3,566,480. That's the number of individual letters recorded in the translation of this text. Just pause and really think about that for a second. We're talking about an ancient text, meticulously hand-copied for centuries, way before the printing press was even a twinkle in anyone's eye, and it contains over 3.5 million letters. It's a completely staggering achievement of record-keeping and preservation. Now, what's really interesting here is how the word count actually changes depending on the language you're reading it in. Across the exact same 31,173 verses, the Tamil translation requires 810,697 words. That's slightly more than the English translation, which sits at 773,692 words. It beautifully highlights how different human languages need slightly different structural tools to convey the exact same ancient message. But of course, these aren't just empty words taking up space. The text is highly instructional. Across all of these chapters and books, there are exactly 6,468 specific commands. That's literally thousands of historical directives, laws, and moral imperatives laid out by the various authors. But to offer a really beautiful balance, it's not exclusively just a giant list of commands. Tucked in between those directives are 3,121 promises. So for every 2 commands you find in the text, you're generally going to find a promise. It creates this fascinating structural rhythm, instruction followed by assurance. And rounding out our rapid-fire sequence of grand numbers, we have 3,294. This is the exact number of questions asked within the text. Honestly, this shows us just how interactive, conversational, and probing the material really is. It doesn't just dictate information at you, it constantly engages the reader and the characters within the text with thousands of questions. Moving right along to Section 2, Old and New Testaments, a tale of 2 halves. As you can see, there's a pretty vast difference in size between the 2 testaments. The Old Testament really takes up the lion's share of the text. It houses 39 of the 66 books, 929 of the chapters, and nearly 600,000 words. The New Testament, on the other hand, while it's incredibly dense with theological and historical significance, it's structurally much smaller. It contains 27 books and just over 181,000 words. Zooming in just a bit on the New Testament, out of its 27 books, a huge portion are epistles, or letters. These form a highly structured network of ancient correspondence. We've got 9 letters from Paul written directly to churches, 4 personal letters from Paul to specific individuals, 6 general epistles written by various authors to much wider audiences, and finally, 2 very specific personal letters written by John. All right, let's dive into Section 3, Extremes, longest, shortest, middle, finding the boundaries of the text. Okay, let's test your trivia knowledge for a second here. Out of the 31,173 verses we've been talking about, what do you think is the longest single verse in the entire English translation? Go ahead, take a guess in your head. Well, if you guessed Esther 8:9, you hit the nail right on the head. This single verse is uniquely massive. It packs in 89 words and 425 letters all by itself in the English translation. It's a highly detailed historical record all about scribes, dates, and royal edicts sent across India to Ethiopia. The translators seriously needed a lot of ink just to get the exact point across. Now, comparing the longest and shortest elements across the whole 66-book canon yields some absolutely fascinating results. The longest book is Psalms with 150 chapters, while the shortest is 2 John with just 13 verses. The longest single verse in the original compilation is Daniel 5:23, while the shortest is John 11:35. But
Here is the most incredible irony. It's found in the chapters. The longest chapter in the entire text is Psalm 119 with 176 verses, and the shortest chapter is Psalm 117 with just 2 verses. The largest and smallest chapters in the entire 1,189 chapter text are literally sitting practically right next to each other. So, because Psalm 117 and 119 are right next to each other, you might be wondering, well, what's right in between them? Here's the crucial point. Out of all 31,173 verses in the Bible, the exact mathematical dead center of the entire text lands perfectly on Psalm 118, verse 8. Right between the longest and shortest chapters, you find the geographic heart of the entire collection.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, Unique Words and Names, the building blocks of the stories. You know, a text really reveals what it values by what it repeats. Looking at the frequency of specific divine titles throughout the entire scripture, the word Jesus appears 979 times. The word God appears 3,358 times. But the title Lord is recorded a staggering 6,853 times. The text heavily centers its themes around authority and sovereignty, and honestly, this numerical repetition just proves it. Now, ancient genealogies are famous for having incredibly difficult names to pronounce. But do you know what the absolute longest and shortest names recorded in the text actually are? Let's take a look. The record for the longest name goes to Maher-shalal-Hash-Baz. This is found in Isaiah 8:1, and it belongs to the prophet Isaiah's son. I mean, just think about how difficult it must have been to learn how to spell that name in school, much less actually carve it into ancient stone or carefully write it out on a scroll. And contrasting instantly with that 18-letter giant, we have the shortest names, tied at just 2 letters each. So was a king of Egypt mentioned in the historical records, and No was the name of an ancient city. Short, direct, and they perfectly balance out our longest name extreme. Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the people who wrote it, the human element behind the numbers. This mathematically complex text was penned by a remarkably diverse group of real people from vastly different backgrounds. We're talking about royalty in palaces, like kings, right alongside prisoners writing in chains. It was written by rugged fishermen, quiet shepherds, meticulous doctors, highly trained scribes, military soldiers, and even a fig merchant and a tent maker. It's this massive tapestry of humanity, all contributing their completely unique voices and lived experiences to the exact same overarching collection. And what makes that diverse list of authors even more staggering is the timeline. These men weren't just sitting around in the same room collaborating. Actually, the Old Testament was compiled over a massive span of about 1,600 years. The New Testament was completed much more rapidly, over roughly 100 years. That means it took a grand total of 1,700 years for this single cohesive text, consisting of 66 books and 3.5 million letters, to be fully compiled. That is just wild to think about. Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. We've looked at the 66 books, a timeline stretching 1,700 years, and literally millions of meticulously recorded letters. So, what does this all mean? Which of these incredible statistics changes how you view this ancient text today? When you really look at the raw data, the sheer historical and structural magnitude is undeniable. Thank you so much for exploring these fascinating numbers with me. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.